Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and today's video is going to be a fun one. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at a level 51 perfect IV Shadow Shuckle in the Master League. Now, these battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, Shuckle at level 51 only gets the 463 CP, so it's going to be extremely tough, basically trying to use the Shuckle as a third shield to let the Shadow Dragonite and the Shadow Swampert get the wins. So without further ado, let's up into the matches and check out Shadow Shuckle in action in the Master League. Hopping to the first match, leading Shadow Swampert into Zacian. Considering there's a Dragonite in the back, definitely nice to catch the Fairy type on the lead. Shadow Swampert is overfarming a massive amount of energy, goes to the Hydro Cannon, loses CMP to the Zacian. But this is actually quite advantageous, because Zacian is going to debuff their defense with this close combat, and now this Hydro Cannon is going to be a lot more lethal. Hydro Cannon, land, Swampert, firing back to back, putting pressure onto the shields from the Zacian. Zacian is going to let that through, because they have a Mewtwo. In comes Mewtwo. Swampert farming up, firing off the Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon not going to be enough to KO here. Opponent lets that through. Aggressive switch into Shadow Dragonite. In the back, they have a Landorus. So the opponent, honestly, is fairly susceptible to fast move damage at this point. We're going to be seeing a shield from the Shadow Dragonite, and these Dragon Breaths just absolutely shred through the Landorus. Opponent lets that go. They are saving two shields for Mewtwo, and hoping that Mewtwo is going to be able to sweep in the end game here. They're saving shields for charge moves from the third Pokemon, but they don't know the third Pokemon is a 463 CP Shadow Shuckle. Psystrike is going to land. At this point, you just send in the Shadow Swampert, get the mud shot damage, force them to throw, and you all know what's about to happen next. Psystrike KOs, in comes Shadow Shuckle. Shuckle KOs the Mewtwo, and that is a good game. Hopping into the next match, now leading the Shadow Dragonite, but unfortunately Dragonite catches a terrible lead in Zacian. Dragonite gonna stay in this lead and play it out, because this Dragonite is not running Superpower. Instead, it is running the surprise nuke move of Hyper Beam. Playrough is gonna grab his shield. Shadow Dragonite continuing to farm and building up and going for the Hyper Beam. Do they respect the damage? They do not, and down goes Zacian. Fairy type out of the way, and they send in a Ho-Oh. So they clearly have no answer to Dragonite once the Zacian has been KO'd. Dragonite is going to be unleashing the Dragon Claw here. We see the switch into the Shadow Shuckle. Opponent staying in, confused by the Shuckle, and they throw a charge move. That is quite nice. They go for the Sacred Fire. Sacred Fire is going to KO the Shadow Shuckle. Gonna wait the timer, send back in the Dragonite. Dragonite firing off the Dragon Claw. Is this going to be grabbing the final shield from the opponent here? Yes, it is. Ho-Oh going to be firing off a charge move. Dragonite gonna let that through. Ho-Oh goes for the Brave Bird. It's now all up to Shadow Swampert. Shadow Swampert needs to try and clutch with a shield advantage. Unfortunately, Ho-Oh will be able to grab that final shield with the Brave Bird. Shadow Swampert massively overfarming, going for the Hydro Cannon. This is gonna KO. What does the opponent have in the back here? Down goes Ho-Oh. It's a Groudon in the back. It makes sense why they didn't want to bring that into a Dragonite, but Groudon is not going to appreciate the back-to-back Hydro Cannons from the Shadow Swampert. Down goes Groudon, and that is a good game. Picking up a very positive lead in the next match, Shadow Dragonite into Ho-Oh. So it looks like this battler does switch around the lead a bit. Dragonite, of course, these Dragon Breaths are incredibly oppressive versus Ho-Oh, and going to be firing off the Dragon Claw here. Dragon Claw definitely going to be getting this Ho-Oh low. Ho-Oh now into the red. Ho-Oh farms to 100 energy, and they're going to start firing off charge moves. We do see a shield from the Dragonite. Ho-Oh goes for the Brave Bird. Opponent now going to send in a Zekrom, and Shadow Dragonite able to double up on Dragon Claws. These Dragon Claws definitely going to hurt. Grabbing the first shield from the Zekrom, and now going for Dragon Claw number 2 here. This Dragon Claw is going to land, and we see the snipe with the mud shot from the Shadow Swampert. Very nicely done. Opponent was able to preserve that low health Ho-Oh. In the back, they have Dialga. Here's the thing. These Dragon Breaths are tearing through the Swampert. Swampert going for a Hydro Cannon bait here versus the Dialga, and gets the shield. That is massive. Swampert kind of has to shield everything here. Swampert is going to be committing the shield on the Iron Head. Opponent goes for the catch onto Ho-Oh, but the great reaction time. Able to fire off the Hydro Cannon. That's going to KO the Ho-Oh. Back in comes Dialga. Swampert with a sliver of HP makes it to the Earthquake. Earthquake going for the undercharge. It KOs anyway. And that's game over. Picking up a terrible lead in the next match, Shadow Dragonite into Togekiss. We're going to see a save switch into the Shadow Swampert. These charms adding up. Opponent now going to send in Giratina Origin. Things going from bad to worse. Shadow Swampert firing off the Earthquake. It's able to land, dealing quite a bit of damage. Opponent is going to fire off a charge move here. Swampert is going to let it go. It is just the Ominous Wind. Swampert looking to overfarm a ton of energy here, building up just shy of the back-to-back Hydros. Firing off Hydro number 1. This Hydro is going to get the shield. Opponent goes for the farm down, and that's going to cost them. Swampert makes it to a second move here, and this is going to get the second shield from the opponent. But the bad news is, now there's no real way to get rid of the Togekiss now that the Swampert has been KO'd. Ominous Wind is going to be shielded. Dragonite farms down, looking to pivot into the Shuckle. In comes Shuckle, and the opponent switched out. Oh my goodness, maybe there's a chance here as the opponent switched in a Kyogre. This Stone Edge not going to be doing much of any damage, but by bringing in Kyogre, this gives Shadow Dragonite the opportunity to farm. Dragonite will expend the final shield here. Kyogre goes for the Thunder, and now Dragonite has to try and commit to the farm down here. Kyogre is going to fire off a move, but this is not enough for another Thunder. It is just going to be the Surf. Shadow Dragonite looking for the farm down, gets it, leaves with the Hyper Beam. Is this going to be enough to KO? That Togekiss is basically at full health. Hyper Beam almost KOs and able to farm down. Moving into the next match, picking up a very tough lead, Shadow Swampert into Kyogre. Ideally, you would love to have Kyogre aligned against the Dragonite, but unfortunately, that's not where things sit at the moment. Kyogre overfarms and allows Swampert to make it to the Earthquake here. Earthquake is going to get the shield. Kyogre might be looking to try and farm down, but they throw at the last second, denying Swampert the opportunity to make an Earthquake without a shield. Kyogre full sent the Origin Pulse, definitely could have just gone for the Surf there. Earthquake is going to get shielded. Now we see the Shadow Dragonite enter the field. Opponent is going to send in Xerneas. Xerneas, very slow to get the charge moves. Dragonite able to make it to the Hyper Beam. Let's see this damage. No shields remaining. Hyper Beam KOs the Xerneas, and it doesn't get to a move. Back in comes Kyogre. Kyogre can apply some pressure here, so we are going to see the final shield deployed by the Dragonite. They go for another Origin Pulse here. They are not going to make it to another move. What does the opponent have in the back? They have a Groudon. Groudon going to be hit with the Hyper Beam here from the Shadow Dragonite. Hyper Beam KOs the Groudon, and that's game over. Favorable lead in the next match, Shadow Dragonite into Groudon. Well, as long as they're not running Dragon Tail, this will be a favorable lead. Let's see, opponent immediately switches out into Mewtwo, so it looks like they definitely were not running Dragon Tail, so Dragon Tail Groudon can very easily stay in there. Mewtwo is going to grab an early shield with a Side Strike. These Shadow Dragon Breaths are just so oppressive. Firing off a Dragon Claw here, looking to grab a shield from the Mewtwo. Mewtwo lets it go, and we see a switch into the Swampert. Honestly, may have been better off catching on to the Shuckle there, as that Side Strike does so much damage to the Swampert. Let's see, opponent, they're thinking about it. They're going to send in Dialga. Dialga only going to be hit with the Hydro here. Hydro not going to be doing a ton of damage. Opponent knows that. They're going to let that through, and now they send in the Groudon. But switch locking the Groudon here is a definite mistake, as now this gives Dragonite an opportunity to get a massive amount of energy. Opponent is going to be firing off a charge move here. We see the shield from the Dragonite as Groudon fires off Precipice Blades. Precipice Blades is double resisted, but it does so much damage. Going for the Hyper Beam here. Oh my goodness. Knowing the game's going to be over anyway, Hyper Beam is going to land, and now Dragonite going for the Dragon Claw here. Dialga can very safely shield. In comes the Shadow Shuckle. Shuckle, unfortunately, being torn to shreds by Dragon Breath. And now Dialga is going to fire off a move. Iron Head KOs the Shuckle. Dragonite gets farmed down. And that's a good game. We see Shadow Swampert back on the lead of the next match, and it's leading into a Snarl Zacian. Swampert farming up a ton of energy here. Swampert is going to wait a turn to force CMP there. Very nice play. Opponent fires off the close combat. We see the shield from the Shadow Swampert. Shadow Swampert is going to be firing off this Hydro Cannon. Hydro Cannon is going to be no shielded, and we see the close combat catch onto the Shadow Dragonite. Very nicely done. Opponent now going to send in a Mewtwo. Mewtwo able to outpace the Dragonite. Very speedy as it makes it to the Psystrike. Psystrike will be shielded. Shadow Dragonite farming up here, going for the Dragon Claw. If Mewtwo wants, Mewtwo can shield this, go for the Psystrike, and KO the Dragonite. And it looks like that's exactly what they're going to do. Opponent preserving the Mewtwo. Psystrike is going to be KOing the Dragonite. In comes the Shadow Swampert. Swampert going for the Hydro. Unfortunately, Swampert's going to lose CMP on this next Hydro here. Farming up, and we see the beautiful catch. Catching the Psystrike onto the Shadow Shuckle. Shuckle not quite KO'd. Opponent sends in the Zacian. Zacian throws a move. Oh my goodness, that is good for Shuckle. If they had farmed down, that could have been a bit rough. But Swampert able to fully farm down here. Opponent, what do they have in the back? They're going to send in the Mewtwo. Mewtwo will be KO'd with the Hydro Cannon. You have to hope it's something weak to Swampert. In the back, they have Giratina, and this is going to be close. Shadow Swampert firing off the Earthquake. We know this does a lot of damage. Swampert continuing to farm up. Opponent not able to make it to a move. They're running Dragon Tail. It's slower than Shadow Claw. Down goes Giratina, and that's a good game. Hopping into the next match, picking up a great lead, Shadow Swampert into Groudon. Although even though Groudon can only hit for neutral here, I'm pretty confident that a neutral Precipice Blades would just about one-shot. So we are going to see a shield deployed by the Swampert. Swampert is going to be returning fire here, firing off the Hydro Cannon into the Groudon. Hydro Cannon is going to land. Swampert farming up. They're going for a move. I believe this is one short of a Precipice Blades here. Lets it through, and it is just a Fire Punch. Unfortunately, it is a CMP tie. The Hydro Cannon, even when no bubbled, is still going to be enough to KO the Groudon. Opponent is now going to send in Mewtwo. Mewtwo is going to be able to win CMP over the Swampert. A bit of a misplay there. Could have thrown the energy sooner, but unfortunately, losing CMP is going to cost the final shield. Firing off the Hydro Cannon here. Hydro Cannon is going to be shielded by the Mewtwo. Swampert farming up, firing off the move, this time before they're able to make it to the Psystrike. Very nicely done. We see the switch into the Shuckle, and the opponent is going to be firing off a charge move here. They go for the Shadow Ball. Shuckle able to tank. In comes Dialga, and this is looking a little rough. In comes the Shadow Swampert. Swampert makes it to the Earthquake here. Does the opponent respect it? They do not! They thought Swampert was short, and suddenly a win con has appeared as Shadow Dragonite can tank either a Psystrike or a Shadow Ball. It doesn't matter what they throw. It's the Psystrike. Get the farm down. And that is a good game. Hopping into the final match, leading Shadow Swampert into Dialga. Definitely where you want to see Dialga on this team, but the neutral Dragon Breath still absolutely shred. Opponent is actually going to save some energy on the Dialga and then save switch into Zacian. This Swampert has a massive energy lead, going to fire off a Hydro Cannon and grab an early shield from the Zacian. Building back up to the Earthquake, again going for the Hydro Cannon though, and this time it is going to be no shielded. Swampert farming up, goes for the Hydro Cannon, loses CMP to the Zacian. Zacian fires off the close combat, that is going to be shielded by the Swampert. Swampert firing off the Hydro here. Hydro is going to grab the final shield. We see a switch into the Dragonite. Opponent didn't throw right away. Lets it through. It's a close combat. Possibly a single moved Zacian here from the opponent, as it looks like they may only have close combat here. Opponent fires off another close combat. The Shadow Dragonite is able to farm down. We'll have to see, what is the opponent going to send in? Is it the Dialga or is it the third? Opponent is going to send in the third. It's Ho-Oh, and now it is Shadow Hyper Beam time. Hyper Beam, big damage onto the Ho-Oh. Ho-Oh does leave with a Brave Bird loaded here. In comes the Shuckle. Shuckle not quite able to farm down, as they do make it to a potential Sacred Fire. They still go for the Brave Bird. That is going to KO. Swampert gets the farm down. Back in comes Dialga. Dialga not going to be able to farm down the Swampert. Swampert makes it to the Shadow Earthquake. That's going to be taken care of Dialga, and that is a good game. All in all, these were some incredibly entertaining battles. Shuckle, unfortunately not able to do much of any damage in any league, can prove to be a very effective meat shield at allowing that Shadow Swampert Shadow Dragonite core to put in some work. And I really did enjoy the Shadow Hyper Beam as well. Definitely caught some opponents off guard, and my goodness, that does a lot of damage. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is absolutely incredible. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.